Welcome to another installment of Arthritis Action's live lunchtime chat. I am Martin Lau, Services Development Manager and Dietitian. With me today, I've got Heather Baumohl-Johnson. She's our Director of Operation and Services. Heather, she is also a clinical hypnotherapist with a background in psychology. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty for this afternoon, there are a few housekeeping. Some of you may have already sent in questions, which we will endeavor to answer throughout the chat. But if you wish to ask us any questions as we speak, feel free to do so. Make use of that Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom platform. And at the end of the chat, Heather will aim to answer some of your questions. Remember, we can only give generic responses to your questions, and we are unable to respond to personal health concerns. Today is World Mental Health Day, and Arthritis Action would like to use this opportunity to raise the awareness. So, Heather, a question that I am really wanted to ask you. Could you just tell me what exactly does it mean by mental health or mental well-being?
Yes, absolutely, Martin. Thank you for welcoming me. Just before we start, I'd just like to say that you very kindly gave me the questions beforehand, and because some of them are a little bit technical, I have actually written them down, so I may actually refer to the notes at some point.
Oh, I think that is useful because you certainly do not want to have the sort of like incorrect information, don't you?
Exactly. So the first question is, what do we mean by mental health or mental well-being? So mental health refers to a person's condition with regard to their psychological and emotional well-being. Mental health refers to how we think, behave and feel about all the different things that happen to us in everyday life. And this is often referred to as emotional well-being. And sometimes you'll find that terminologies will be used differently by different people. So if anybody is talking to anybody about mental health, it's always worthwhile asking them what they actually mean by a certain term. So for us today, the mental health refers to the way we think, behave and feel about all the different things that happen to us in life, and how we deal with that.
So it's quite a key definition that we can convey to our listeners. Absolutely. Or our audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay. Feel free. It's about, so mental health and emotional well-being, it's about how we maintain a balance between everything that happens and how we retain a psychological resilience so that we can carry on and enjoy life. And so the psychological resilience is what we'll be talking about a lot today. So most of us know how we feel physically when we feel well or unwell. For example, if we have flu or chickenpox and we're laid up for a few days or weeks, and then we'll recover and get better and head on out and get back to life again. But when we're living with a long-term condition like arthritis, we often feel physically better for a short period of time, or a longer period of time even sometimes, but then we can have a flare-up and we take that dip down again into not feeling so well. So we know when feeling better it may come back again, which is the difference between having the flu or something like that, but having a long-term condition. We know the long-term condition, it will rear its head up again at some point in time. So living with that knowledge and fear may interfere with our everyday life. Therefore, this may affect both our physical and mental health. And as we can see, interestingly, what I find interesting, as we can see on the next slide, is the neuron and nervous systems are known to influence each other. And I think, so what I'm trying to explain here is why are mental and physical health entwined? And it's because the neuron and nervous systems have
they work as one.
They work as one, yeah.
And certainly, some of the leading neuroscientists has proposed that is actually one unit when we are sort of, feeling under the weather.
Yeah, exactly. So as the mind and body influence each other, so reduced physical health can lead to an increased risk of developing mental health issues, and poor mental health can have adverse effects on our physical health. So living with arthritis means that on some days we may be in physical pain, which means we have difficult moving, we have difficult sleeping, and everything that we do can be really, really a great effort. And you know, we suffer a lot with fatigue as well. So when feeling so physically challenged, it's no wonder that that mental health is affected. Therefore, I like to think of both physical and mental health as being on a continuum, because some days you're physically fantastic, and other days you may have a cold, and on other days flu. And so it moves up and down the continuum. It's the same with mental health. It's exactly the same, you know, and everybody has this as well. We move up and down the mental health continuum. So we maybe feel anxious or stressed on some days. Some days we just want to hide away in bed and not even get up. So each day may be different, and we move up and down both the physical and the mental health continuums.
Wow, that is it's actually massive, isn't it? Okay, you mentioned something quite a lot in terms of the mental health side, and I sort of like picked up that there may be something, what we sort of refer to as positive mental health. Is there such a thing, or if there is, what exactly is that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned previously, positive mental health is about how we maintain a balance between everything that happens and how we retain that psychological resilience so that we can enjoy life. I'm going to give some examples of what we mean by psychological resilience.
Yes, please.
And you know, some examples of what that means as well. So when you are psychologically resilient, you recognise your own abilities. And that's really important, because when you're feeling so low, you don't feel like you're worth anything. So recognising your own abilities is really important. So it could be, today I climbed the mountain. That could be physical, or it could be metaphorical. You know, you actually achieved something, you did something. Today I cooked a cake. Today I gave an awesome presentation. You know, it could be any of those things, but it's about recognising that you actually did something worthwhile and valuable during the day. Another aspect of psychological resilience is, can you cope with normal stresses of life? Here we are, we could hear that going by now. Yeah. So can you cope with normal stresses of life? So for me, I know when I'm stressed because I feel there is too much washing and too much ironing to do. And that may seem like a silly thing to say, but because there'll always be washing and ironing to do. But when I feel this too much washing and ironing, it's because I'm feeling low. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to butt in, which I do apologise. I mean, that is quite useful when you use the term resilience, because to me, it is almost as though that you are bulletproofing, you know, yourself, you know, in terms of any sort of, you know, ill mental health side of things. So, yeah, I do like that a lot. So, again,
yeah.
me butting in.
No, that's fine. Yeah, so for me, you know, it's, as I was saying, you know, to cope with normal stresses of life, there's a trigger that I know when I'm feeling low, because we don't always notice when we feel low. So for me, the trigger is when I think there's too much washing and too much ironing to be done. So I'll actually sit down, I'll stop, and I'll just actually do some relaxation and just take a look inside me internally what's going on, because it's not the washing and ironing, because that's there all the time. So actually what's going on. Another aspect of being psychological resilient is when you're able to work productively and rewardingly. So I don't know about you, Martin, but I love a to-do list. And I actually love crossing off the things on the to-do list.
Like shopping list.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really important to me. So the thing is crossing them off, and also knowing that you have done a good job and feeling about what you've achieved. So knowing you've done a good job and that you've achieved something, that's really important. Another aspect is when you make a positive contribution to the people around you. So that could be people at work, it could be your family, your friends, your neighbours, or even strangers.
A good deed.
Yes, a good deed indeed. Another one is when you have energy and vigour. So one of the first signs when you recognise in somebody else that they're feeling quite low is that they've lost their oomph, they've lost their get up and go. Their get up and go has got up and gone. So it's about having that energy So when living with arthritis, this again can cause fatigue. So if you're fatigued with the arthritis and also getting low mood, causing your energy to be lower, it can be really, really hard.
You just want to hide underneath the duvet.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a duvet day. So when I'm low, what I try and do, I literally force myself to go for a walk. Or to paint or draw something, so that at the end of the day I can actually see something that I've achieved. My paintings may not look pretty, and they may not be going to be gifts for people, but at least there's something on paper, and it's out of me, and it's on the paper, and it makes me feel better.
It's good. You put in your feelings in it, and you don't even need to show anybody, because that's for you and only you, and you can just, it is the way that you express how you feel at that certain time. It could be a quite good outlet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Another one is when you have positive relationships and connections with other people and the wider community as well. So when you are low, you find out who your friends are, because when you're low you become quite negative, and so only your good friends and family are actually going to keep in touch with you when you're constantly being negative. So when you have psychological resilience, you are mostly positive with other people, and so that's a good way of knowing, how you're feeling, how your mood is. Ask your family and friends as well. Just get them to check it out for you, and let them say, "You're a bit low today. Are you all right? What's going on?" Have that checked with the wider community as well. And then another one is being able to deal constructively with negative feelings and emotions. Every one of us, our default position is negative. So having positive thoughts is really important. And that's what we have to change the way that we think. And we can do that by some of the techniques that we'll talk about later.
Sounds as though that is quite a good, or it is a foundation of a good coping strategy. Really.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and that leads me on to the next one, it's having the ability to cope. Which is, when something happens, we can deal with it. It doesn't become this big issue, it doesn't become a big problem, because every day something's going to happen, every week is part and parcel of life. And so it's just what are our coping strategies, and how are we going to deal with things when they do arise? And that's the important thing, that challenges in life are always there, and challenges can be overcome.
Yes, sure.
And then two of the other ones are having a good self-esteem and being contented. And interestingly, the World Health Organization also suggests that spirituality can make a significant contribution to mental health and vice versa. So good mental health may influence our spiritual life as well. So when we don't feel quite ourselves or under the weather, as you said earlier, it often shows itself through our emotions.
Now, emotions always seems to be a massive, massive term. Can you tell us in fact, can you tell us a little bit more about emotions, please?
Absolutely. It's really important to understand our emotions and to know that they are natural and normal experiences of everyday life, and everybody has emotions of some sort, unless they have a real psychological disorder. But nearly everybody has some emotions or different emotions happening. And I'm sure we've experienced most of the emotions that we can see on the slide there. It's really important to recognise that the emotions we are feeling and what the cause of these emotions are. So learning how to recognise, then control the emotions can help us to reduce our pain levels. And that's particularly important if you've got arthritis, and live more active lives free from the impact of arthritis as well.
Sounds familiar.
Martin, certainly does. Can you guess how many emotions a human may experience?
Oh, must be in the thousands. I would say a lot.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It actually really surprised me when I've read this. But 34,000 different emotions that we can experience. So with this number of emotions, it makes me wonder how we can get through one day, 1 hour, and even 1 minute without something happening. But thankfully, there are different techniques we can use to enable us to navigate our way through our different emotions. And I'm really grateful for an American psychologist, Dr. Robert Plutchik, who condensed those 34,000 emotions into 8 primary emotions, which operate the foundation for the others. So the 8 emotions are grouped into opposites: joy and sadness, acceptance and disgust, fear and anger, surprise and anticipation. An emotion starts when we experience the feeling and we actually recognise what is being experienced. So once the brain identifies the emotion, the body responds. So the emotion affects not only what's happening, but it also affects our body, and I think that's important for people to realise. So, for example, if you touch something hot, you automatically move your hand away. It's an automatic response, and it's beyond our control. It's something that we just do. Whereas others are within our control, for example, facing the fear of giving a presentation, singing on a stage, or talking on a live webinar. Martin, I don't know if you've seen the film Inside Out.
Oh yes, I've seen it. Love it.
Oh, I love it too. It's one of my favourite films.
Bing bong.
It's a great film, produced by Pixar Animations and released by Walt Disney Productions. The film is set in the mind of the young girl Riley, if you remember.
Yes, yeah.
And the emotions that Riley is having are actually given personalities. So you have joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust, all as little personalities running around Riley's head. They tried to lead, I know, it's a brilliant film. They tried to lead Riley through life as she and her parents adjust to their new surroundings, having moved from Minnesota to San Francisco. It's a great way to visually see how emotions can affect us. And if anybody hasn't seen it, I recommend they do, because it is so factual. Because interestingly, the director, Pete Docter, actually noticed the changes in his daughter, and that's how the film came about. And the producers actually got a lot of neuropsychologists and psychologists in to actually make sure the emotions were being portrayed in the right way. So it's a very, very clever film. Very clever.
It is. And certainly I've read an article about a neuroscientist. She gave a lot of praises to the actual movie, and saying that how accurate that it portrayed some of the emotions. I think it's a fantastic movie. Okay, before I start talking about movies, Heather, with your experience working with people living with arthritis, could you just maybe allude to what emotions that someone have got this conditions may feel?
Absolutely. Good question. It's quite interesting because when we do the self-management courses and when we have people there, one of the questions we ask them is what emotions do they feel? And they often give a range of emotions, which can be, first of all, it's actually relief at getting a diagnosis, because people can wait such a long time sometimes to actually get that diagnosis. And relief that they can give the name to something. Yes. There's a name for it that's happening.
And similar to what Lee Walmsley said in the video.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love Lee. She's great.
Yeah, she is.
Anger is another one. And people often feel that because it's, why me? Why have I got this condition? What have I done in this world to have this condition put on me? And so people tend to go through that stage as well. And then also fear, because it's fear of what the future may hold. There's almost a misconception that if you get arthritis, it's going to progressively get worse, and particularly as you get older. As we know, that's not necessarily the case for everyone. So, it's about working to prevent it getting worse. That's
the crunch point.
Yeah. And then there's grief. Grief is such a difficult thing to come to terms with. It's, the loss of things that they can no longer do because of their condition. So I know one lady who she wanted to retire, and when she retired, she wanted to knit and to crochet. But she had unfortunately got arthritis in her fingers really badly, and so she had to give that up. But thankfully she found something wonderful else to do afterwards that she would never have dreamt that she would have done when she retired, but she did. And interesting, that leads us on to another emotion that people have, which is happiness. And that may sound strange, but because people learn to do things in different ways, or they learn new things to do that they never would have expected, it can actually bring happiness as well.
Oh, how interesting is that? How can we know which situation affect our emotion? Is it some sort of gauge that we can have a look at? Is there a way to find out?
Yes, definitely. We all have the ability to cognitively analyse, that's to work out the cause of an emotion. So, for example, it might be similar situations. So that could be confrontation. Maybe we don't like that. It could be work meetings. Maybe bring on the emotion of stress or fear. It could be actions, different actions that we do. So, and this may sound strange to some people, but some people, washing and drying their hair can be a big issue for them, and some people eating, as I'm sure you know, it can be an action which brings on an emotion, and it might be environment.
Yeah.
That's another one. So being outdoors, being at the cinema, being at restaurants, it can all bring on different emotions. But what we need to do is to, and I'm sure you know about this as well, it's the emotional journal. So, you know, you read the food diaries. But
exercise diaries.
Yeah. So the emotional journal is something to really keep together, you know, and write down the emotion, write down where you were, what was happening, how you were feeling, how it manifested itself. And, you know, and then when you look back, you'll be able to see patterns of what happens. So for me, it was when people don't live up to my expectation. So it's not about anything that's going on that other people are doing, but it's about my expectation of people. So I had to. That's one of the things that I learned when I kept the diary, and also grief. You know, people moving away, people dying. It can all bring on grief, and also just getting a long-term illness. And as we said, you know, learning to live differently. It is a grief for the life that you previously had. So, you know, all of those things can come out of the diary, plus lots of others as well. I just want to give an example as well about a friend of mine who we'll call Jane. Bless her, Jane had a hip operation, and she was really, really fearful and frightened and embarrassed of the fact that she might fall over. And if she fell over, not that she'd fall over, but that she wouldn't be able to get up again.
It's quite common.
Yeah. So she was, you know, didn't want to ask other people for help if she did as well. So what Jane did, she actually got herself on the floor and got herself up again and got herself on the floor and up again and repeated it and repeated it and repeated it until she felt relatively confident. And then, you know, inevitably it happens, doesn't it? You know, she was in a car park one day and fell over. But she was up on her feet and about without any hassle, without having to ask anybody or anything. So Jane recognised that her emotion was fear. She took action, and when she did fall over, she was able to cope with it quickly and without any fuss. So understanding our emotions can enable us to positively control them.
I think Jane, without knowing, that she actually followed a very famous sports science principle called SAID. It stands for specific adaptation to impose demands. So basically, what she's in sort of like in plain English is you practice something, you know, for a long time, and you become good at it. So what Jane literally did was practicing, you know, getting up from falling, and then she practiced and then she actually got good with that. And it's also you know, quite useful to know that you know, her action is sort of like driven by her emotions. Heather, can you tell us a little bit more, or if you can, you know, how emotions can be seen by others?
Yes, absolutely. Great question, Martin. So, you know, we've talked about how emotions and our emotional well-being is how we feel internally, but our emotions always show themselves as well. So it can be in our facial expression, it can be our body language, it can be our movements and hand gestures, which I'm great at.
Me too.
But this is known as the motor component. So our emotions not only affect us internally, our emotional well-being, but they also affect how we communicate and how others see us and interpret our actions. And that's the key thing. People interpret the actions of our emotions that they see. So while all of this is taking place, our bodies also experience a chemical reaction known as the physiological component. For example, when panicking, we hold our breath. This may lead to a slight tingling sensation in our hands. Every one of us experience this to some extent, but the intensity and expression is different for each of us. Emotions may also cause stress and anxiety, and they're two buzzwords, aren't they, of today, stress and anxiety. But often anxiety and stress are thought of as the same, but they're actually different. Yeah. So stress is often caused by external influences and triggers, while anxiety is internal responses. So anxiety may start as the result of stress. Stress can manifest itself or show itself as different emotions, for example, anger or worrying or anxiousness, whereas anxiety is a particular feeling of fear or dread, apprehension, and often you won't know the root cause. And for someone with anxiety, this can be very, very difficult because they're getting all these symptoms and they're feeling so anxious, but actually they don't know why. And that's why, you know, for somebody who's in that position and they've had it for a long time, it's great to go and get some help from somebody who can help, perhaps a clinical hypnotherapist or a counsellor, somebody who can just help them to identify why they're feeling like they are. We've probably all experienced anxiety, the flight and fight feelings of a heightened state of awareness around us, the tummy tensing, and perhaps sweating and a dry mouth. This is the body getting you ready to run very fast or to fight for your life if you need to. Prior to these biological feelings, the brain or neurological processes are taking place as well. So I love the new imaging technology that we've got that can actually look at the brain and see what's going on.
See the lights going on, yeah, the fMRI.
Yeah, I love it. So the imaging technology and neurochemical techniques have shown that the amygdala and the hippocampus show that they are significantly involved in the production of fear and anxiety. It is thought that the amygdala acts as a central communication station between different areas of the brain, which monitoring incoming sensory signals and areas of the brain that interpret these signals. It then passes on the messages to other parts of the brain that a threat is present and prompts a response of fear and or anxiety. So it is suggested that emotional memories involving specific fears, for example, fears of spiders, oh, I hate those little things, I really don't like them. I have to try and imagine their little legs are all on roller skates and going all over the place to make me laugh at them rather than fear them. But, you know, other examples of fear are flying or heights. They're all stored in the amygdala, which is really interesting. And also the hippocampus, which translates threatening episodes into memories, appears to be smaller in size in people who've had quite traumatic experience, such as child abuse or military combat. But obviously further research needs to take place into this to help those people who are living with post-traumatic stress disorder to see if it is something to do with the hippocampus that is causing that. And it may be that these areas of the brain also influence the pain response, which is why I'm mentioning them now, because, you know, keep an eye out on that if you're interested in new technology and new theories. Because, you know, if you're having a pain response and it's caused in the brain in that way, then, you know, it's good to know what's going on. But if you haven't already listened to it, then I recommend people listen to David Vaux's webinar a few months ago now, because he talks specifically about pain and the different ways in which that works.
Yes, very good webinar.
Yeah.
And I think now he's certainly looking at, your stress, can positively contribute to people's level of pain. And I think it is, really useful to try to gain a little bit more understanding of it. Okay, so how can we help with our mental health?
Well, there are lots of tips and techniques out there, and to help people, particularly who are feeling anxious or stressed or have fears to do with with their anxiety, and obviously pain as well, which is why we're talking about this today. But we're all unique and different, and so it's really important that all of you try as many of the different techniques that are out there. Because you may find one works really well for you, but it may only work for a certain period of time. And then you might need to move to another one. So for me, the exciting thing about it is there's all these different things that we can try. So let's try them. Let's not be afraid of trying them. Let's just try them and see which works best for you. And when you find the ones that work best for you, then that's fabulous, and you can use those to help. But some of the more ones that are recognised as being good ways of combating anxiety and stress are breathing. We all breathe, but breathing in a certain way is really important. So when we're anxious, we often breathe very shallowly. And so it's about, when we feel anxious, just stopping, focus on the breathing, and actually begin to breathe deeper and deeper. And the refocusing your mind away from what you're panicking about onto the breathing is also a really helpful technique as well. And then the other one that we sort of briefly touched on is relaxation. So that could just be sitting down and going through a relaxation of the body from your feet right up to the top of your head, which is a great way to relax. It could just be lying down. For somebody, it could be swimming. For other people, it could be lying in the sun. I'm not really supposed to do that without putting creams on, but it's what works for you to relax is the really important thing. And relaxation, what I mean by that is stopping as well. So it's not just keep doing something to help you relax, but stopping, giving your mind a rest so it doesn't have to keep working. Gardening is a great way, getting out in the open air. But don't set yourself targets to achieve. Just go out and enjoy it. Just potter and enjoy.
Pacing your activities.
Yes, pacing, that word again. Yes. Guided imagery is also another a great way to refocus yourself. We can be sitting in the office in London, but in our heads we can be lying on a beach, or we can be walking up a mountain, or
don't tell the boss.
Whatever it might be. I think she's listening. And then positive thinking is a real great one, because as we said, our thoughts our default is negativity, because it's about the fight and flight, and it's about making sure we're safe. Here we go again, I'm saying that word, it's not a cue, honestly.
That's what we're doing with all the protests around the corner.
That's right, yeah. So, the positive thinking is really important, and the more we can change the way we think into positivity, is going to be so much better for us, and it will help our mental health immensely to be able to do that. However, if you're feeling really, really low and you've been like that for 3 or 4 more weeks, then I would suggest you go and speak to your GP, because it may be clinical depression, and that's a totally different state to be in, and you would need some help from your GP at that point.
Sure. Okay. Are there any resources that our audience could take a look at?
Yes, absolutely. There's one book that, particularly for people living with a health condition and arthritis, is a book called Mindfulness for Health. So we haven't really talked about mindfulness, but mindfulness is another technique which people can use to help with their mental health as well, and their physical health. and this book, Mindfulness by Health by Bertram Penman, actually shows how people living with very severe situations changed the way that they thought about pain. So pain is described as primary pain and secondary pain. And the secondary pain is the way in which our brain learns about pain and learns how to respond to pain from being a child. And what we need to do is to make a new path in our brain through our neurons, a new path of understanding pain and working with pain, and that can really help.
So almost as though you need to rebuild, your neurons in order to, to start getting a hold of some of your emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It doesn't sound that easy, though.
It's not easy. It's not easy, but it's possible. And if you want to do it, you know, and you're willing to work at it, you can do it.
Human beings are extremely bioplastic anyway, so I guess that, you know, with the will, then we can certainly achieve that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's the Arthritis Action Video Understanding Pain, which we've mentioned before, which is one of the webinars that David Foe did earlier in the year, and all the other videos that we've done, and the whole SMR self-management resource online is available for people to look at. And if they haven't looked at that, I would suggest that they do. And you know, if people have got any questions, you know, come and ask us, because we're here and we want to help. You know, and if we can help and we can find the answer for you, we will do.
Good. Right, I have a question for you. Okay. Why is it when you're stressed, your body tenses up?
Well, it's a normal reaction, Martin. And so when the body's stressed, our muscles tense up. It's a way of protecting us.
Yeah.
So muscle tension is almost a reflex reaction to stress, and the body's way of guarding against injury and pain. So when sudden onset stress happens, the muscles tense up all at once and then release their tension when the stress passes. So chronic stress causes the muscles in the body to be more or less in a constant state of guardedness. So when muscles are taut and tense for long periods of time, this may trigger other reactions in the body and even promote stress-related disorders. So for example, you know, if your shoulders and neck and head are tense a lot, then you're often going to get tension-type headaches or migraines. And that's one of the problems I have, because I suffer with migraines quite a lot. But you know, MSK pain is in the lower back and musculoskeletal pain. Yes, sorry, thank you. In the lower back and upper extremities has also been linked to stress, and job stress can cause lots of back and neck tension and muscle.
And also when you're sitting down, it's just not a good position, really.
Yeah, so it's really good to have, you know, if you can, get your boss to get you a desk that you can raise, and so you can sit and you can stand at different times. Really helpful.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Just looking at my colleagues here. Okay, that's fine. Right. So thank you very much, Heather, for your time. You know, we have now come to the end of today's live webinar or live chat. So, you know, I do know that for me, I have learned a lot from chatting with you, and I hope you would too. So again, once again, thank you, Heather, for your time. And then thank you for those of you who are watching, and also those that send in the questions to us. And if we haven't answered any of your questions, you know, during our conversation, we were definitely going to answer that, respond within a few working days' time. And if you want to learn a little bit more you know, about topics or any other topics related to managing your arthritis, please check out our online self-management resources. And I think in particular, which is related to, you know, to today's conversation, do have a look at our mental health directory. And, you know, that brings to the point that I have to mention that this is our last live chat in this current series. I just hope that you guys are going to tune in next year, where we have got more exciting live chats ready, you know, for you to enjoy and to learn. Thank you and goodbye.